Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Michael Rossi, Chairman of the Clinton Planning and Zoning Commission. I'd like to call this month's regular meeting to order. Will clerk please call the roll?
Sure. Michael Rossi.
Here.
Mike Florio. Ellen Dahlgren. Here. Eddie Alvarino.
Here.
Mike Knudsen. Not here. Chinzia Lettieri. I see Chinzia is connecting, so. Jay Mandel.
Here.
Zach Ford.
Here.
Dylan Walter. Not here. Bo Clark.
Here.
Lawrence Edwards.
Here.
And Susan Marcus. Okay.
Okay. I would like to see Larry first for McNewton, and Bo's the next one up, and I'll see him for Dylan Walter.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm here, just in case you didn't. Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chair's comments. I don't have anything to say tonight, so I'll just bore you. We'll move on to the next item, minutes, review and approval of the May 13, 2024 meeting minutes. Were there any comments, concerns? No? Motion to approve, thank you. Okay, thank you, Mike. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Abstaining,
wasn't present.
okay, thank you.
I just wanted to interrupt, Mike Knudsen just entered the meeting.
Oh, okay, so who went home?
Larry
Um,
was from,
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, you were seating Larry for Mike Knudsen.
Okay, sorry, Larry.
very good.
Sorry, Lane.
No problem.
Okay, move on to item 4, public hearings. First one is Planning and Zoning Commission 24-2, proposed text amendments of zoning regulations, town of Clinton, for the electrical vehicle charging displays and kiosks. There's a new proposed regulation, special exception in the interchange development zoning district, business 1, and industrial 2 districts. We must close the hearing tonight, the public hearing portion of this tonight, but we do not have to make a decision to make sure we close the public hearing. That clock is running out. Let's see, I'll start with, is there an agent or applicant to present to us?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, staff, Maximilian Mahalik with the law firm of Cuddy and Fader on the behalf of the applicant. I am joined here this evening with Mike Dennehy. He's Shell. Volta is now a part of the Shell group of companies. And we have Dean Apostolaris. He's with Kimley Horn, our design specialist. So I know Kristen was here at the previous 2 public hearings ago in April. Apologies that she cannot be here. She is on maternity leave, so it's a very exciting time for her. But I am thrilled to be here this evening. So I just wanted to know there were submissions of April 22nd, and there were submissions of June 6th to this board. So what those submissions did is they addressed some of the comments that came up in the previous public hearing and also some of the written comments that were received. So I know that you guys have those submissions, and I want to respect the board's time, but in light of just putting up substantial points to the record, I just wanted to highlight a couple things. So these regulations, as noted by the chair, they're specifically focusing on 3 districts, the B1, the I2, and the IDZ districts. This is a distinct land use. It would be accessory permitted by special exception in just those 3 districts. Why those districts? We're looking at areas with larger retail operations, larger business orientation with high internal traffic. So looking at corridors such as US 1, I-95, Route 81. But again, these are set regulations for a distinct land use in distinct districts. So I know there was a concern about, well, is this going to open up digital displays townwide? That is not what the intent is here. And this amendment is specifically designed in a manner that clarifies that this is a very specific use at very specific districts that have to meet very specific conditions. And again, there's another review even beyond that to make sure those conditions are adhered with, that being the special exception use review process. So when looking at the uniformity requirement under Connecticut general statutes, what that requires is that the same type of land use that has similar regulatory approach. Here, any person bringing a electric vehicle charger with the digital display would have to adhere with the same regulations, no matter if it be Volta or any other provider of such infrastructure. Again, a couple other points I just wanted to highlight in the previous submissions. There was articulation of conformance with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan looks at minimizing pollution, mitigation efforts being built in to mitigate, minimize, avoid pollution. Also looking for policies in the zoning code that promote economic development.
Just want to note that, Daniel Walker, you said? Okay.
So do you want to unseat,
And then unseat vote. Okay. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
All good, thank you. So comprehensive plan focusing on economic development and mitigating pollution. And then beyond the comprehensive plan, we look at state policies. There are many policies at the state level for promoting EV vehicle use and the promotion of EV infrastructure. Beyond that, at the federal level, there are executive orders in place promoting and pushing for the adoption of EV infrastructure and the use of electric vehicles and the production thereof. Now, I talked about conditions in the draft amendment. I just want to highlight again for the record, these conditions are designed to minimize, mitigate, eliminate any potential impacts on neighboring properties. What are some of these conditions? Looking at 200-foot setbacks in the right of way, 50-foot setbacks in the property line, limits on the number of display kiosks to be implemented in groups, ensuring static images, ensuring the use of an 8-second circulation between digital displays, ensuring that there are dimmers utilized. And also something that can be built in is, for example, shutting off the digital displays after store hours end. And then one of the updates we wanted to highlight in our most recent submission, use of a landscaping mitigation tactic. So if something could potentially be visible from the public right of way, implementing screening as conditioned by the board and commissioned by the building department to avoid any visual impact on that public right of way. So that's another level of conditions on top of those right of way setbacks that we just mentioned previously. Now with that, happy to answer any questions. Again, we have Mike here, he's with Volta and now with Shell. And then we have our design specialist. So happy to answer any questions that the board might have.
I'll start, and this may be a stupid question, but when I was looking at the regulations, I did not look at the site plans because this is not about the site plan. So maybe that would have answered it, but what I want to know, based on how the regulation would be interpreted, is, are you talking, when you say there's 4 units, in the regulations says you can have 4 units, does that mean it can charge 4 cars? It's going to be something where you drive into? Or is each unit able to charge 2 cars and it's something you're going to pull up beside?
So I can answer that.
Oh,
Yeah.
great.
So each cord, right, there'll be 2 charging stations. Each station will have 2 screens.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's good. So it's not 4 of those double stations,
No.
it's 2 of the double stations.
No, you're seeing more and more of those. It's usually at the fast charging locations. These are L2, they distribute about 10 kilowatts per hour. It's 1 cord. The screens have dual screens for each station.
But I think, Mike, that he's saying that they're proposing to, but that's a site plan issue. What you're asking.
No,
is
I'm asking what the regulation, what it says,
Allow 4
is allows 4 kiosks.
kiosks, exactly.
We would not put 4 in a box.
Well, yeah, but I'm worried about, right, so the reg says 4 kiosks, so that could be 8 charging stations. Or it's 8 signs.
Yes.
So the math could, in the way the regulations are currently drafted, could play out that way. Again, I understand this is not site plan review. What this applicant would only propose as
Yeah.
filed as part of the record annex to the petition is 2 at the Stop and Shop location. Just something to keep in mind, and also in terms of regulations. When the regulations get drafted, you want to encompass what Volta implements, and I've done many of these, and I've only ever seen 2 on Volta's end of the materials are filed.
It's just,
Yeah.
like you said, it's the regulation. And so the regulation would allow, as written, allows up to 4 kiosks.
Yep.
Okay,
Correct. And then, Mr. Chairman, if I may, just in terms of the 4 kiosks, recognizing that that is a level increase, there is built into the draft additional mitigative efforts, including separation distances from residences when you have more than 4, separation distances between pods of chargers within parking lots. And there's an additional level of review with some of these other conditions built in under section 11 of the draft. If you were to have a proposal that comprised more than 4 of the chargers.
very good. Well, yeah, you're not seated, but I just for clarification, at a public hearing, alternates are allowed to.
So I've got several things to say. First of all, I believe when you just made the comment, you referred to the comprehensive plan. I believe you meant the plan of conservation and development, not the comprehensive town plan.
Correct.
So I'd like to read something real quick. Any display of lettering, logos, colors, lights, illuminated neon tubes, or other graphic representation visible to the public side of a building or from a traveled way, which conveys a message to the public or intends to advertise a use, conducted, goods, products, services, or facilities available either on the lot or other premises, excluding window displays and merchandise. I think everybody here would agree that it's a very accurate description of these displays on the kiosks, correct?
I would submit that the intent of these displays are for people who are in the parking lots
That's not
or
what I asked you,
charging
sir.
to view them.
Did that description I just read, is that an accurate description of what will be on the kiosk?
I would respectfully disagree that that's a description of what is proposed, because if I heard correctly, there was a reference to visibility for the public right of way.
And
That is
the
not,
parking lot is a public right of way, sir.
so a public right of way, in the way these draft regulations are drafted, you're looking at a setback from a public right of way, being a public road, for example.
Sir,
This is
sir,
different, if I
with
may.
all due respect, you're not gonna put these where they can't be seen from a public record. That's the whole purpose of having them, is to have them visible to the public, correct?
If these are to be visible for users within the parking lot, those passing by them, going into the Stop and
But the
Shop, and to
parking
be
lot is a
charging.
public right of way in this case.
I would respectfully disagree. There's a careful definition
Anyway.
of right of way built into this
Anyway.
draft regulation.
What I just read is our definition of what a sign is. Number one, so that's clear. And that also makes it a clear violation of the plan, of the comprehensive town plan, which, as we all know, is our zoning regulations combined with our zoning map. It is also an obvious and clear violation of 34.5.1. There shall be no motion, there shall be no more than 3 neon and or LED signs permitted per lot. Each sign shall not exceed 6 square feet, with the longest side of the sign of the square or rectangle not to exceed 42 inches. The aggregate area of the 3 signs shall not exceed 15 square feet. And then it goes on to illumination. Prohibited sign, 34.9.7. No sign shall be permitted which has blinking, flashing, fluttering, oscillating, rotating, pulsating lights or other illumination devices which have changing light intensity. Clearly, that's it. If you look under signage in 30.3.5, all signage shall be uniform and compatible with surrounding areas.
Okay, well, we're getting into issue.
Well, I just want to point out that this is pointed out to his response about my concern about uniformity. You can allow different uses in different zones, as we all know. You can't have a different standard for the town. So you can't say this is a sign and then it's not a sign. And that is stated clearly in the end of your proposed 3.6.5, which it goes on to describe the kiosks, which shall not be considered signs, which then opens the door to everything townwide, because if we're not considering it a sign, it's not regulated in any way, shape, or form.
Mr. Chairman, if I may respond. So as noted in our submission of June 6th, this body has significant discretion to shape its regulations. But in doing that, implementing its discretion, it can make the most strict, the most narrow regulations possible about what a use looks like, what a use is, what a use does, and how you control the impacts. And here, the way this regulation is drafted is creating a very specific use. It is not digital displays. It is electric vehicle chargers with digital displays. Why? Because we need to be able to provide a subsidized charge. That very distinct use, it's not just a Volta use, it is a use trending across the industry. We're seeing more and more of those across the Northeast. That very specific use would be permitted if a special exception use permit is granted by this body at very specific sites in very specific districts. There is nothing in here that would create a precedent to have digital displays of any kind throughout the town, this town-wide basis. This is a very specifically, strictly designed amendment, which this body has the authority to design under Connecticut case law and the application of Connecticut general statutes. And by drafting those very careful, specific regulations for this very specific use, you fall within the requirements of the uniformity requirements of the Connecticut general statutes.
Excuse me, Chinzia has her hand up. She'd like.
Okay, Jinsey.
Chinzia, you can unmute, make your comment.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. It's having computer issues. I actually have a few comments. But I'll start with a question. And please, Chairman, let me know if this is allowable at this time. But there has been some talk about, we know that a lot of Stop and Shops are closing down. And I guess I would like to know what that means for this application, that if the location where you're trying to, or the partnership that you have created with Stop and Shops, as from what I understand from last time, that this is a.
We aren't doing the site plan right now, so.
Okay. So that's, okay. So then a couple of other points. He mentioned, the gentleman mentioned that according to state and federal laws, that they would like to see more built out infrastructure around electric vehicle charging stations. And I agree with that, but what I think is a bit of a stretch is to say that they're looking specifically for electric vehicle charging stations that have these kiosks. I think there's a huge difference between building out your electrical vehicle charging stations and then having electrical vehicle charging stations with kiosks, with advertisements. And then I'd also like to say that part of the plan of conservation development, when people in Clinton were asked, the community members were asked what they would like to see as this 10-year plan from 2015 to 2025 look like, a large number of our community said that they envision a Clinton that preserves its existing neighborhood character. And this is not part of the neighborhood character. This is not part of from what I could read from the POCD as something that would be something that the town and the community imagined as preserving that. And I'd like to add one other additional thing, that you're talking about subsidizing the cost to shoppers by having these kiosks and having these advertisements. As an electric vehicle owner, or I have a hybrid, currently right now, Big Y in Clinton and also in neighboring Westbrook have electric vehicle chargers at their grocery stores. And at Westbrook, it's completely free for shoppers. And in Clinton, it's I get 2 hours free to charge my car and to go shopping. So that seems pretty fair as an electric vehicle owner, a pretty great subsidy without having a bright kiosk in my face.
What was the question?
So the question is, how is that the better way to subsidize costs to the shoppers instead of maybe partnering with Stop and Shop and having just an electric vehicle charging station?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So to the comment regarding state policy, so I just want to note in our submission of April 22nd, 2024, we highlight certain policies implemented by the state for the Connecticut Deep EV roadmap. And two of the bullet points here, I just wanted to articulate for the record. One is, in that state policy, there's a specific reference that charging stations may display advertising and branding for the EV host or partners as one such means of facilitating local EV adoption. Moreover, there's a reference to ensuring at a local level a competitive approach for expanding publicly accessible charging infrastructure open to a variety of investment models to maximize competition and thus ratepayer value. And I submit that the Volta infrastructure lies at the intersection of those two policies and specifically reflects what has been articulated in state policy as an important and successful tool to expanding EV infrastructure. Now, I heard the concern regarding community character. Now, again, as the chairman noted, this is not site plan, but we don't want this to be something that is town-wide in residential areas, disturbing community character. And this amendment was specifically drafted, therefore, to limit this use to the B1, I2, and IDZ districts. Why these districts? Well, in the purpose section that was added in the most recent version of the amendment, we're looking at these districts because they contain brick and mortar retail with large levels of existing internal vehicle trips where kiosks can be set back from the public right of view. We want to preserve the community character. We want to put these in sites and in locations on those sites where they would blend well in and not create a disturbance for the community character. But then we wanted to go one step further than that. We wanted to secure the community character through the use of the setback regulations, through the limits on cycles, through the use of auto dimmers. And in addition, having even additional regulations if we were to go over 4 charging display kiosks. But again, we wanted to build in all these conditions, and then we heard this body at the last hearing, and we added another condition. If it's felt that by the this body that more landscaping would be needed, that condition is built into this. And so it is the goal of this amendment as drafted to preserve community character. Now, I will turn to Mike on that last note, but in regards to the success of the Volta business model and why it's important versus not having displayed. But I would say, folks are in the business, people go into business to provide a good use while sustaining their business, and partnering with the digital advertisers has been key to implementing that success and making Volta one of the largest providers of charge across the country. But if you just want to talk a little bit about why you guys partner with just digital advertisers and the benefit to the consumer on that front.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I have.
Go ahead.
There is a good sized body of literature that has looked at these bulletin boards along highways that change the display, just as yours do, every 8 seconds. And, I printed out just one, but there are dozens of studies both in this country and elsewhere. This one is a group of researchers at the University of Alabama, Birmingham, in collaboration with a group at Florida International. And just to highlight a few things from the abstract, the crash data analysis at 18 study sites in Alabama and Florida, where the researchers were, revealed that the presence of digital billboards was correlated with an increase in crash rates in the areas of billboard influence compared to the control areas that are downstream of the digital billboard. And these same researchers also did driver simulation studies. Results, using a simulator along the scenery. The results of the analyses indicated that the significantly impacted driver retention, and that teens are the most likely drivers to divert their attention spent in a digital billboard. Now, obviously, these studies are carried out, and I read a Swedish study, a French study, and probably 4 or 5 other American studies. These are carried out on highways, so people need to drive carefully in parking lots too. You've got the shopping carts, you've got children running around, you have people who are backing up, perhaps without looking carefully. You need to have perhaps even more attention in a parking lot than on a highway where everybody's going in the same direction at the same time. My question is, do you have any studies on the impact on safety, on driver attention, within parking lots for these digital billboards for changing display. Are you aware of any studies that have been conducted by academics, by traffic research?
So, Madam Secretary, we had a petition in the town of New Milford, Connecticut. That their planning commission asked us to do a traffic study of the area. We did, with the help of folks here, our engineering team, the results of which we can share with you. We know of no distracted driving issues. If you notice, and again, we're not talking about the site plan here. We tend to be in the front of the store where the pedestrians are. Our stations are not similar to a highway where they try to grab the attention of the driver. Ours are kind of staggered to catch the eyes of the pedestrians coming through. So it's a bit of apples and oranges when you're talking about the larger billboards and vehicles moving at a much higher rate of speed. But we did do a study for the planning commission in New Milford, Connecticut, that I can share with you.
And that study, I believe, was shared as a part of a previous submission. We had included a driver distraction impact analysis letter prepared by our traffic engineering team. And what we did in New Milford was we analyzed full speeds, amount of traffic that was coming through, specifically the drive aisle along the front of the store, as well as some of the parking drive aisles that were coming down towards the front of the store. So we analyzed sight distance, we analyzed speed, number of trips that were associated in each of those aisles where those charging stations were. And just to give you a couple of numbers from that, specifically with stopping sight distance is what we looked at there in the case of, someone may being distracted and having to stop both for vehicular and pedestrian traffic. And the materials that are included in the submission can point to this a little bit more, but just for the record, showing here some generals, sight distance for a 20-mile-per-hour vehicle, which is typically what we found to be the speed along a drive aisle in the storefront, is about 115 feet of stop. So it's a significant distance, where we're placing the charging stations, in our professional opinion, there would be no risk in terms of pedestrian accidents or distraction at those low speeds with those high stop sight distance. And then for pedestrians, the average pedestrian speed, 3 miles per hour, the average foot speed there, you're looking at 15-foot distance for that. So, we're talking about pretty large distances here. Again, I can point you to that report that we have included in prior submissions. If we want to, I don't know if we were able to bring it up on the screen, but it shows we have analyses that we have done there.
Just to be clear, you're putting these charging stations up where the pedestrians are, but the cars have got to get to them.
Mr. Chairman, may I know this isn't site plan review, but it seems to be a lot of questions about the placement. Would it be appropriate if we could share on the screen
I really don't want to bring in the site plan. What I want is,
and I'm happy to respond to.
that really is a different application.
Understood, but just to know.
I have a question. Is it can I speak as an alternate?
Yes, you may, Larry.
You had said before that you have jurisdiction by federal and Connecticut state laws that you have the authority to do this. And if you have the authority to do this, how much authority do you have? You just pretty much, say this is what we're going to do and we have it all planned out. And, the state of Connecticut's giving you the authority in our town, whether we like it or not, that kind of the situation it is.
Well, wait a second, Larry, I've got to interrupt you. What we're talking about here is whether or not we're going to change our regulations. They are, what he was arguing was whether or not what we're trying to change our regulations to are consistent with the state regulation.
Yes, but he had said before that he has the authority or through the state of Connecticut to do this.
I don't believe so.
No.
I don't believe you said that either, though.
Well,
Yes, I just wanted to respond to the conversation we were having earlier. Just wanted to add on. While we haven't seen any record of any traffic hazard created by these, which are to be located close to the building, and I know we're not focusing on site plan, but for example, in the regulations, not only are there the 200-foot setbacks from a public right of way, but these have to be located within 100 feet of the front of a building, bringing any of this infrastructure close to the front, say a Stop and Shop. But there's additional factors built in, as I've mentioned before, the use of the auto dimmers and also the prevention of having moving images, requiring static images, and then having at least an 8-second refresh cycle. All those are built in, not only for a consideration of potential visual impacts, but also for consideration of safety. All those speak to ensuring safety. So I just wanted to highlight that.
I think Zach has something.
Go ahead.
I have just a few questions. You spoke before about a willingness to shut off, the regulations having a willingness to shut off the display after solar hours. Does that prohibit charging from occurring if the display is shut off?
Not necessarily. We leave that up to our partner. In more cases, they don't like that element at night. They just, there's not control over that situation. So we work with the landlord or site partner to work through that. But
So it's,
we can turn the charger.
but the charger could be left on also.
Correct.
With the display off.
Correct.
Okay, and my second question was, referring to, Bo's letter, he discusses there's a changeover, an expected changeover to the DC fast charging stations. Is that accurate? And it's still-
Not in this situation. What we find in these, we call our Stop and Shop partnership destination charging. That's the person who we consider an opportunistic charger, right? They probably have a home charger, they're going to Stop and Shop or one of our other retail partners. Might as well top off, if you will, right? As you go into the store, you come out a half hour, 45 minutes later, you may have another 20 to 30 miles on it. The DC fast chargers are more of those essential drivers like myself who has to get back to Boston tonight. I need that quick charge. Some of our Stop and Shop locations have the L2 model, the slower charger, and they're adding fast charging components in a different part of the parking lot with non-media on them, just because they're getting utilization.
So I guess my question is, and it sounds like, but correct me if I'm misunderstanding this. That you do have fast chargers that do not, there's an option not to have the screens.
Correct.
And,
They're more expensive.
but these are, the purpose of the screens in this scenario is to subsidize the charge. But there are options with DC chargers with no screens and it's a full charge. So there's a purpose of this regulation. Have, here, let me just, to. In the regulation, as you read it, it discusses to subsidize the charge, is that the screens are to subsidize the charge?
Yes.
Okay, so then if the screens are on the DC fast chargers, that is not subsidized charge. Or with this regulation in theory.
Rarely do we put screens on fast charge.
Okay, that answers my question.
The fast chargers are non-media, the dual port that the chair mentioned earlier, where it's one machine and two cords coming out of it. Anywhere from 50 kilowatts, again, the one out back here is 10 kilowatts per hour. Those are 50, they go all the way up to 360 kilowatts.
So in terms of both this product line, that's all you're asking you to speak to.
Yeah.
These regulations with the screen would only apply to the slope, the triple charge.
Correct. We do have locations with 50 kilowatts.
That's what I was.
Yeah, that has
That's not only apply to the triple charge.
Exactly.
You should put a fast charger in the back, put a screen on it, go back,
Yes.
subsidized charge.
So and then one thing to keep in mind is when drafting regulations, you want to avoid something called spot zoning where you're just focusing on one law for one party. And these are also designed for some flexibility for other providers who might have other models.
I just think in terms of the commission, it's.
I think Zach,
Sorry, I just, a point to the commission, I guess, sorry, but if we're gonna be weighing here like a public good versus, adhering to the need, if not all are subsidized, then it kind of defeats the subtracts a public good provided.
I had the same thing that Zach brought up is that while your plan, again, it's a site plan issue, your regulation would allow for DC fast charging, even if it's not your plan, your specific plan. The regulation would allow for DC fast charging at a charge rate. There's nothing within the regulation that says these will be free. Always. They could change them tomorrow to even the slow charge to be a charge, a fee. So there's nothing within the regulation there. I've been in zoning between here and Orange for over 20 years, and I've never seen an applicant propose a regulation that they didn't fully intend to maximize to their benefit. So when the applicant comes to you and says, we only want to put in 2, And the regulation that they're proposing says you're allowed 4 and possibly more than 4. Beware of the Trojan horse.
My Shinzia has her hand up again.
Okay, go ahead.
Shinzia, you can unmute.
Yes, sorry. I just wanted to kind of circle back to the comment that the gentleman made about how the state says they may use kiosks to be competitive. So yes, we may use them, but if we feel that that makes us as residents, as committee members, to make our regulations more competitive, that means at this point, if we would be saying that we don't feel that our EV regulations are competitive enough. And I think that's what Lawrence was speaking about. But it doesn't say we have to use EV chargers with kiosk, only if we don't deem what our regulations are already doing to be competitive as is. I just wanted to kind of clarify that point. And I would also like to say that the I-95, Route 81, whatever corridor you're talking about, to me, when you look at the POCD, that is covering all districts, all areas of the town. And so to say that those members or those parts of those towns don't cover the vision of a POCD, to me is not accurate. That's all.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to clarify again, the way the amendment is drafted is 3 very specific districts. Only those sites would be available in those 3 districts. In terms of a business model, business models are in flux, as we know, but the goal here is with the digital displays being built in, there is the ability to subsidize charge for folks. And that's what we're trying to do in terms of expanding that public good. And without having those digital displays, we know one thing is true. Volta will not be able to bring its subsidized charge in for folks into Clinton, creating a gap in the provision of EV infrastructure along the I-95 corridor, along US 1, along 81. And Volta is very successful at rolling this out. In the community I live in, not to be named, an EV provider came in, signed a contract with that municipality, never showed up. Now they have a bunch of metal spikes sticking out of the ground in our main town's parking lot. Doesn't look great. Volta has a very successful track record. That is why Shell recently acquired Volta. And Volta knows its business model works because it has that experience and can prove it. And not only does it have success, but it provides benefit to the public in terms of promoting EV infrastructure and providing convenience for those with electric vehicles. I would also note just something, again, as mentioned many times tonight, this is not site plan review. Just because the regulation drafted may permit up to 4, that is not what is proposed. I'm going to come back if this amendment is adopted with a site plan. That site plan is going to have 2 chargers. And what's really good about this way this regulation is drafted, and we had to convince Volta to go with this, because a lot of communities, the goal is let's get the amendment and go to building permitting. But we read the room and we built in that special exception review by this body. And by this body is not only is it looking at adherence with the conditions, but it's looking at the impact of the design on the community and the number of units and the location of units. So this is not the end of the conversation if this body, bless you, were to adopt this amendment. I just wanted to respectfully note that. With that, happy to answer any questions, and I thank you guys for your time.
I'm gonna-
Is there- You have the
I'm gonna
fees,
break for a second. Oh, go ahead, Lauren.
what's that? Is there a percentage of the fees being collected going to be going to the town of Clinton if this is adopted?
So there's nothing in the proposal on that front. However, I would like to know, one thing that it could potentially be considered during, for example, site plan review. Volta has had a successful history of partnering with municipalities to do free or subsidized advertising for municipalities, for events, emergency announcements, other important news. Just something to keep in mind, that we'd be able to partner with the town of Clinton on as well.
What I wanted to do is, check and see if there's anybody from the public who would like to speak, and then I'll bring it back to the commission again. So at this time, is there anyone, from the public who would like to, ask questions, or not? Provide evidence, either for or against this proposal? Or even neutral? Okay, I wanted to do that because we do have an audience here and it's a public hearing, okay. With that, I'll bring it back to the commission. Does anybody else have an additional question? The, applicant?
Mr. Chair, remember the first time they came before us back in April, they were talking about, 9 square feet or something, that was roughly the equivalent of a vertical 42-inch TV. And looking through the application, there's something about like a, 55-inch screen.
55%.
Okay, but is that larger than the square footage to be? Or you?
No, it's the same calculation.
9 square feet is the regulation.
Yeah, because in the regulation, it's, 7.5 feet in height, 9 square feet, screen space size. Right, so that a 55, I assume that's 55 diagonal, which is.
Yes, I think we went through the math.
Was it 55 diagonal or 55?
It's 55 diagonal, it's 27 inches by 48.
Yes, okay.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, Well.
Again, not to beat a dead horse, but 334.5.1 C5 states that in our sign regulations, no sign shall have a length, any diameter larger than 42 inches. This is 48, I believe you just said. And not to beat a dead horse, but firmly believe this is a violation of the uniformity clause of 8-2. You cannot have a sign. This is clearly a sign. You're advertising with signs. That's your business. You cannot call it a sign here and then say, oh no, but if I put it this way, it's not a sign. It's a sign. You could draft a regulation if you were put some mind to it, you might be able to come up with a regulation that could somehow include that. You'd have to amend multiple parts of our sign regulations and different sign regulations. But again, we cannot just say, this isn't a pad. Not a pad because I call them pad. This is actually a chocolate cake. You know what? I can call it whatever I want, but it's a pad. And you can call it whatever you want, but it's a sign. And signs are strictly regulated in many parts of our regulations. This proposal doesn't agree. Would have to change those other parts of the sign.
This proposal, no, it doesn't require changing the other parts, because this is a standalone sign regulation.
But it's not, it says that it's not considered a sign, but you just can't say it's
But
not considered a sign.
that's why it's a separate regulation. So the question is, do you want to allow this type of sign or not? And that is what we need to
Right,
discuss.
but what I'm saying is if we were to allow this type of sign, we would be violating our own regulations in multiple areas. So we can't,
It doesn't matter if we're making a new regulation, so that does not cause a violation. What would cause a violation is if it contradicts our town plan of conservation and development. Which,
comprehensive town plan. We don't have to find consistency with the plan of conservation and development. The plan of conservation and development
we,
is advisory. The plan of the comprehensive town plan is what we have to follow. We have to state our findings of consistency or lack thereof with the plan of conservation and development. We could actually find it inconsistent and still approve it. It's advisory only, the plan of conservation.
well, we usually wouldn't.
You usually would,
Okay.
yes.
Go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a note again. The way this amendment is drafted, as noted, it is a standalone regulation. It is separate from section 34 that does not violate the uniformity standard. This type of amendment has been adopted by a number of communities across Connecticut, is currently being considered by a number of communities across Connecticut. It's found to fall within that uniformity standard because it is uniform for this very specific use in these very specific districts. there is no conflict created with the sign code because it's separate and apart from the sign code. And a very strict reading of the zoning code would permit that use that is newly created in very specific districts. So I just wanted to note that again. I know we've gone back and forth a couple times about it, but
Mike Knudsen, I see you took yourself off mute. Did you want to speak?
Oh, I did not realize I took myself off mute. Sorry.
I thought you had a comment. Okay.
Okay. There are no more questions, for the applicant at this time. I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing. Right?
Mike, before we do,
Oh, let me get to discussion on the. Okay, the second, and then discussion. Go ahead, Bob.
I just have one more point to bring out. These EV charging stations, you get about 35 miles of charging an hour. Yeah,
It's 10 kilowatts, somewhere up to 11 and a half.
and I know that the gentleman's letter pointed out that this could be a benefit to businesses in town to have this. In my opinion, you know, when I go grocery shopping, it takes me roughly a half an hour to do. So I get 17 miles on the charge. I'm not gonna go out of my way to get 17. I would take advantage of it if I were going there. But I would not go out of my way. In other words, I would not go to the Madison Stop and Shop over the Clinton Stop and Shop if I could get 17 miles worth of charging. It's 5 miles there, 5 miles back, plus my additional time. It's not much of a draw to businesses, in my opinion.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Close the public hearing. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Jeez.
We got delayed, they were saying opposed. Abstaining. Okay, the public hearing is closed. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Let's find the agenda again. Okay. Item, 4B, Planning and Zoning Commission 24-6, special exception application for Riverside Drive earthworks. Create a berm for settling basin to accommodate dredging of Cedar Island Marina. This is a continued public hearing, but, we have, until next month to close it if, there are additional information that's needed. Oh, okay.
The strict time frame in which we have to make decisions or to close the hearing is June 17th, so it can close tonight. If it doesn't close tonight, then we want an extension probably.
Oh, okay. I was reading it in July. I don't know. Okay, is there an agent or applicant here tonight?
My name is Jeff Shapiro. I'm the owner of Cedar Island Marina and also SAG3, the owner manager of SAG3, also the property owner and applicant. I'll try to keep this short. I don't think it's complicated. To begin with, I'd like to go over a little history of our property. And I'll walk it around. I was going to use an easel, but I don't think you get the picture. What this is an application to use a dredge disposal site that's west of our existing marina. We'll continue using it the way it's been used for the last 50 years. This shows a history of the site back in 1965 when it was first used. About 8 years earlier, this is the oldest photograph I have, and I'll bring this around to show everybody. And it shows every 5-year progression of this site being used as a dredge disposal site. And so this is 1965, 70, 75, then it goes to 80, 85, 90, 95, 2012, and then I have a picture that shows last year of what it looked like. I'll show you over here too. This is a history of the site, starting at 65, going every 5 years. So since 65, this has been a dredge disposal site. And what we're proposing to do is to continue using it the way it's always been used. And that is to put our We pump it, hydraulic bridge into this area, which is contained with a berm. This shows the berm is built around the perimeter. And we pump the material in here, and it's control, the runoff is controlled through these spillways, which retains all the solids and allows the water to go back into the sea. This
Sir, can you just hold, I was wondering, if you hold it so that people, that are virtually attending can see it?
So this,
Just trying to think.
I'm not sure that's necessary.
It doesn't talk, so it's not gonna get.
Yeah.
oh,
Oh.
oh, I see. There,
There you go.
oh, there.
Yeah, I keep talking.
Okay.
Oh, every time you talk, the camera turns to you.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
Well, I'll keep
Now,
talking
you
then.
keep talking, it's showing it.
You don't really want me to keep talking.
You can say, it's fine, like you told them.
This is,
I've got a question on to keep you talking while you can show. Do you ever pump, ship out the sediment?
we have in the past, we've made a lot of efforts to try to ship it out. And years ago, the town landfill used to use this material because it's so fine. It's good capping material. Not a lot leaches through it. You can't use it for a septic system because it's, you know, it's
Too dense.
it's too dense. And so years ago, the town used it for to cap its landfill. The hammocks also use this material to fill, they built, you know, in a flood zone. Their houses were elevated. They needed some fill to build up the elevation so that you weren't going up high stairs to the house. And then capped that with good topsoil, but it just took up space is what it did. But very few people want it. And also on top of that, I don't think our neighbors on Grove and Commerce Street want a lot of trucks going through an occasional truck would be fine, but
Curious if there was a use for
yeah, well,
it.
we used to have ads in the newspaper that said, free fill, come and take it. And every once in a while we get some people with a small pickup truck filling a hole in their backyard. But never anything substantial because we put in maybe 7,000 cubic yards per year. So that's about what it takes to keep our marina dredged. So, you know, that's a lot of material over the years. You know, this is probably 250,000 cubic yards of material that's there now. The application we have before you that I'll let our engineer describe more detail, but I'm just trying to give the history is that you know, our application is to go up another 4 feet, which will buy us another 10 years. And that's usually the life of zoning permits here are 5 years for this activity now. It used to be 10. We used to come back every 10 years. But they're 5 years now and you can get a renewal for 5 years. So it buys us 10 years. But to show over here, this is what I was talking about where the berm is this. It's almost like a kid would build or beach, you know, where you build a berm and it contains the water. And this does, you know, this shows when it's dry. So this is the history of the site to show that this is, you know, what it's always been used for. It's never had any other use. And that's our continue using it as it's always been used. And just to show a more current picture, the way our surveyors work these days, they don't just get out there with a transit and map it all out. They actually use a drone. And when they do that, at the same time, they can take photographs. So this shows the current. This shows the current state of affairs at this property. It shows the berm, and we have a road that goes around the perimeter, which is an access road. And that's so that we can properly maintain the spillway, because during the dredging operation, we're going out there every day to make sure that the proper, you know, that the solids are being retained and the water is getting, you know, discharged. So this shows what it looks like today. And then Just show one more. This is, what we were approved 10 years ago here. When we came in, this is what the application looked like. And in yellow, we were proposing to make the berm 21 feet high. 21 point something, I forget exactly, but it was a little over 21. And the interior elevations at the time. And during the last 10 years, we've made it so that all of this is up to the full previously permitted height. And what we're asking for now is an additional 4 feet. So we would make the berm a little wider and then add 4 feet onto that. And what we do is we maintain that road so that we can continue to have access around the entire site so we can watch what's going on. I have a couple of show what just a few. This is what our spillway looks like. And what it is, it's a four-sided structure that has slats. And we have a walkway, that we walk out onto to maintain the slats, to add slats or take them off. So in other words, we're in the dredging operation, we add a lot of slats, make sure that the material is settled out, then we can take off one slat at a time and watch the water, spill out and, make sure that the water's clear. And what we have on site here is actually, there's a series of two spillways. One is at the end of the main area, and then we have a second area here, which has another spillway here, so that for some reason, some mud was to spill over the first spillway, we catch it on the second. To make sure that no solids are getting out into the estuary. And, over time, you can see that this trench has not been filled at all because we have done a good job of making sure that we're retaining all the solids. Because if we were letting lots of solids go out there, we'd be getting all kinds of letters and fines and violations and things like that. So we don't want that either. So. But and then as part of what we do around the berm, we have a shelf that's built into the berm so that when we do our dike work and build up, you can see this is the road. And if any, in the process of building the dikes, if any mud pieces were to spill off, they'd be spilling off onto the road. And even if they rolled across the road, they'd be caught on this shelf before and then the Phragmites itself, which is the weeds that grow there, act as an additional, silt retention. And then this shows the road that we have to access the spillway. And then if you were curious, that's what the pipeline looks like. It's just a big plastic pipe that's all glued together. So that there's no joints, so that things can't spill out. And that's basically it. That's what the history of our site, and then our engineer from BL will explain what we're proposing, which is simply to add 4 feet onto the berm, then be able to over 10 years add 4 feet of material on the inside. That there's no structures being proposed. There's nothing new being proposed other than what we've been doing for the last 60 years.
Thank you, Joe. So for the record, my name is Aaron Schumacher, senior engineer with BL Companies and a professional engineer in the state of Connecticut. This is our current site plan, very similar to the one Jeff showed you previously. I'll try to stand in front of the camera at the same time and see if we can kill one bird. But basically, our intentions is the berm is currently at elevation about 22. We want to raise it to elevation 26. We're going to construct the berm in accordance with the geotechnical study that's been done. It will have 2-to-1 side slopes. The main piece of the berm will be 15 feet wide with the exception of between the two basins. We're gonna narrow it up in there. It'll be 10 feet wide at the top of the berm. We're gonna maintain that road, below our berm that Jeff was showing you pictures of. And the 4-foot shelf will be on the kind of the downhill side, outside of that. So it's pretty, straightforward application, for sediment erosion controls. Our intention is that everything will basically go into the basin. Anything that's not going into the basin will get caught by that 4-foot shelf. Around the outside of the roadway. The elevation that we're raising to, has been reviewed by the geotechnical engineer, kind of for stability and such of the berm. So we're staying below their recommendation. They recommended about 1 foot above the elevation that we're proposing to go to. And our intention is to construct the berm with their recommendations in mind.
By that you mean the state?
Say that again?
That's the state regulation, very good.
Oh, no, so, there was a geotechnical study done on the material and stuff.
Oh, okay.
It's actually here. And they provided some recommendations on, we'll put the lifts down, compact them, stuff like that, some reinforcing that will go in between the berm. They reviewed that 2-to-1 stability so that the berm won't, kind of fall down or have any erosive issues. I think that's basically the plan. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
I have one thing I'd like to add though, and that was that, when we applied, this is maybe the 4th time over the last 40 years that we've applied to do this, in stages. And this is the first time that it was recommended by staff that we hire an independent engineer to review what we're proposing here. And there was an independent engineer hired by the town that we paid for, by the town, to review what we're proposing here. That reviewed everything and went over everything with us and made some recommendations in terms of mainly explaining further what we were doing than what we had explained. And my understanding is that he has issued a report saying that he agrees that what we're doing is being done with good methods and is stable. But I thought that was worth that.
The town engineer reviewed it. We also received comments from Deep. They reviewed it, as well as the Connecticut River. They didn't have any comments on it as well.
Larry, I believe you had a question?
Part of the river cog too. We have 10 years ago, you had a permit for how many feet? 4 feet at the time, or was it more?
We had already previously got the permit for the dike height that we were still asking for the same dike height, but we increased the interior 4 feet.
Okay, and what's gonna happen in 10 years?
We will go up another, we're talking about 4 feet. The geotechnical report we got said that we actually, stability wise, we could go up another 9 feet. But we said the permit's only gonna be 10 feet, so why ask for 9 now? But we do have in the report that we got from the geotechnical engineers, they said that we could go up another 9 feet, which was probably buy us somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 to 30 years.
What about an alternative of dredging the berm out to where you have the capacity you need for the next 20 years? And using way.
We will get we're gonna use the material from on site today inside the berm.
Right.
To raise the berm. So we're gonna create some capacity there when we move that material. It's inside the basin today and we're gonna move it to the berm. Right, so we're gonna create.
But is it just from storm weather, or is it actual, garbage and poisonous material?
No, it's previously dredged material. It's on site today, right? Because from the last permit where they placed this material, we're gonna use that to raise the berm. So not only will we create volume by raising the berm, we're gonna create additional volume by removing material to create the berm, if that makes sense.
Every time DEP does, make us go through and take cores inside our basin, send it out for analysis for hundreds of material, including PCBs and you name it. I mean, there's about 30, 40 pages of different parameters that we have to test for. And it's always been tested as clean material. And because we're lucky enough to be in an estuary. Since Bostitch left 25 or 35 years ago, and Cheeseboro Ponds left 15, 20 years ago, I'm not sure exactly, but there's no industry left in our harbor. You know, you know, a lot of other harbors do have a problem where they've had industry and they have PCBs and they have a lot of toxic material, but luckily Clinton is has one of the cleanest sediments of any place in Long Island Sound or in this area.
Thank you. Jay, and then we'll go to, Eddie. Jay, that's.
So is it my understanding that you're running out of space and you want to go up?
Yes.
Or that space, you want to just build the sand capsule?
Yes.
Okay.
4 feet. You know, the geotechnical report we had submitted said that, you know, we could go another 9 feet, but 4 feet will buy us at least 10 years. So why ask for more than we need?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, Eddie?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say that the Shapiros have come before us, me and the other commissioners several times. I believe this is the third time that I've been seeing Mr. Shapiro in front of us. And they always did what they had to do, but this is they have to do what they're doing. They have to keep that harbor dredged for the boats, and they've been good neighbors, and they have a lot of property back there, and it was our hopes a long time ago that they keep filling it in and possibly build units on there, but Mr. Shapiro didn't want to. I mean, even the commissioners at that time suggested, you know, like they could build. It's their property. It's a lot of land. I forgot how many acres it is, but it has to be dredged, and it's a very good material. Like Jeff said, that people use he often give it away for free. I mean, you know, but they need to do this, and I'm in agreement with Larry. Just let them raise what they need to raise instead of keep coming back. For me, it's redundancy, because I had my boat down there, and they're incredible. The yard is meticulous. The dredging material is all clean, and it helps keep our harbor, you know, open, and to get out. Westbrook had big problems when they didn't take care of their dredging. Mr. Shapiro was taking care of the dredging. They had to have outside people come in and do it, because the boats couldn't even get in and out. So it was only certain times of the day they can get out. Our harbor is wide open, and like there's no industry there to pollute the water, but the way they do it is that they bring it up on land. I don't know if anybody ever seen this. They do the dredging, and then it's offloaded, and then it drains back through these pipes. The water goes back into the marina, back into Jeff's yard with the water, but and all the mud. They have a 3-step berm, I believe it's 3 steps. I've been out there a dozen times, and because I always like to see how they're doing on there, and I always said something. I said, this is prime real estate. I mean, it's their property, and like I said, they're one of the top taxpayers, which that doesn't mean anything, but they're good neighbors, and they do everything first class. I just don't understand why they got to keep coming back and only go 4 feet, 5 feet.
Thanks, Ed. I'm gonna cut you off, let Zach ask a question.
So you mentioned that you guys check every day, and it will be about 5 to the renewal 10 years. So we'll say 5 years, just to say, do you guys keep a manifest or any sort of like record, or is there a process you guys do? You said you walk out, see what's going on, make sure there's no spill out back into the estuary.
Right.
Concern I have isn't necessarily the cleanliness of the material, it's more the creating of like turbidity or the, you know, all the solids being shook up that could really affect the aquatic life in that area. So I'm just wondering, how do you guys make sure things are working as they're supposed to?
Well, one thing to bring out too is that the way we do dredge, if your concern is turbidity, the way we dredge with a hydraulic dredge is basically using, it's a vacuum. You know, it's a suction device. And when we use a suction device, it's any turbidity that's created, because you do want to create some turbidity, that it works with an auger that kind of stirs it up and it sucks it in. And that's how it accomplishes what it's accomplishing. The alternative would be to use, is to have a big crane on a barge that comes in with a clamshell bucket. And we used to actually be in that business, not for our own marine, but for other people. And you have a clamshell bucket that comes and it picks up the material and puts it in a barge, and then it gets taken out to sea by tugboats. During that operation, the entire harbor turns black. And so in terms of turbidity, if that's the concern, the method we're using is the cleanest, is a lot cleaner than the alternative.
Yes, my concern, it's just a question first,
Okay.
and it's about with the berm installed. And if there is overflow or if there is something going on with the settled material in the actual basin, a storm comes by, sweeps it over. So that's an extreme example. But I mean, your process to make sure that those spillways are
maintained properly.
Yes, without having the sediments spill out through there. And that's
Right.
what I'm trying to ask.
Right, that's, we